Now we're going to tackle the neckband, and this is a bit that terrifies most people, but I'm going to talk you through step by step. So we need to first sew our neckband together, right sides facing. As you can see here, that's already attached together. Open out the seam and fold it back on itself. You can press this if you want to secure it in place. So I'm just going to put a pin to hold the seam allowances open there. And we want to quarter the neckband. So I'm going to do it in half this way. So in half that way. And I'm making sure I'm lining my stripes up to give a really nice finish. So that stripe's all lined up. And then into quarters. We've done halfway and now into quarters. And then fold it halfway and do find the quarter on this side. Okay, so by folding it in half and then half again, I've got 4 equal quarters of my neckband. So I'm going to know when I'm sewing it in, I'm not going to stretch it on some sections and then not enough on other sections. So it's not going to be over or under stretched, it's going to be equally stretched all the way around. So now I'm going to quarter my neckline of my t-shirt so that it'll fit in. So I'm going to use this shoulder seam as my starting point. So I'm just going to put a pin in there. And then a lot of people would look at this and think halfway would be the opposite shoulder, but not necessarily. So if you fold it in half and then line up the neckline, being careful not to stretch it. Halfway is actually here, so if I lay it flat you'll be able to see where I mean. So looking at the t-shirt you'd think halfway was here and the other shoulder seam, but it's actually just about 5 centimetres in front, just there. Then to find the quarter of the neckband, sorry, the neckline, just on the neckband, I'm going to put the 2 pins together and find my front quarter. And then put my 2 pins together and find my back quarter. Just the fabric slipped out of my hands then, so I'm just going to double check it's in the right place. It could do with coming forward a few millimetres. So now I know these 4 pins equal quarters of my neckline and these 4 pins are equal quarters of my neckband. So my next step is to pin it all together. So I'm now sitting down because this is a job that you want to be sitting down doing with a cup of tea. So we're going to line up the seam on the neckband with the seam on the shoulder seam. On some patterns it does say to put in the centre back, but personally I think if the back's clean with no seams and then there's a seam at the top, it can look a little bit random, so I like to line it up with the shoulder seam. But if you wanted to do it with the centre back you could, you'd follow this step, but you'd follow all the steps that I've explained, but you just start at the centre back instead. So I'm going to put my pin through the seam on the neckband and then I'm going to come through the seam on the shoulder and then come back up and then back up. And then when this is sewn together, these seams should meet up perfectly, like that. Now I'm going to match up my second pin on my neckband with my second pin on my neckline. There we go. I'm going to line up my third pin with my third one on my neckline. There we go. And then I'm going to line up my 4 pins together, making sure I'm not twisting the neckband at any point. There we go. So I know that if I stretch this bit to put the neckband in, this bit, it's going to be stretched equally all the way around. So I'm not going to have any bits where it's not hanging properly because I've overstretched it. A little tip when you're doing this, if you can make sure the tip of your pins is at the top when you're sewing, it'll make it, so if you imagine you're sewing like that, it would make it much easier to pull out. If you don't do it that way, it's okay, but it does make it much easier. So now I need to stretch these 2 bits together to get the neckband and the neckline to align. Neckbands are normally cut 90% measurement of the neckline, so you would expect to have to stretch it. If you didn't, the neckline wouldn't sit very nicely and wouldn't look very professional at all. So try not to recut your neckband to be bigger if you can, because it won't add to the look of the garment. So I'm going to stretch it between my 2 pins. Normally what I do is I slide my finger down to the middle, pin halfway again, and then come to this side, stretch it halfway again. So between these 2 points, I'm going to stretch it, slide my finger into the middle, which is halfway, and pin it. Halfway again. And then halfway on this side. I'm just going to put a couple of additional pins on this section so that I can, when I sew, I'll sew the shoulder seam flat. So stretching my neckline between these 2 pins, sliding my fingers into the middle, pin in halfway, going back to this section, pin in halfway again, and then this section, stretch halfway again, and last section. Stretch, slide your finger into the middle, pin halfway, pin halfway again, last pin, pin halfway again. And then on this shoulder seam, I'm just going to put a couple of additional pins just to hold that shoulder seam flat when we're sewing for a nicer finish. So that is all pinned in now, ready to be sewn. If you want to have a look at it before, it should be evenly stretched all the way around. If any bits don't look like they are, and they look like they're pulled too tight or not pulled evenly, you can take it off, go back and quarter and start from the beginning. But that all looks really even to me. I chose to go for a contrast stripe on my neckband just because I like playing around with different looks when I'm making my own clothes. When you come to sew your neckband on, it's really helpful if you can remove the tray on the front of your machine so you can put your neckband around the arm of your machine. So just gonna slide this on and then choose a piece to start on. I think it's better to start on the back, so if you make any mistakes, when you're starting and finishing, they'll be less noticeable than if you start on your centre front. So I'm going to line the presser foot up with the edge of the fabric. I'm going to put my needle down, and you are going to gently need to stretch this to ease the neckband in. Because remember, we said before, the neckband is 90% small, no, not 90% smaller, 10% smaller than the neckline of the t-shirt. It's 90% of the measurement. So I'm just going to gently stretch it. Getting close to this pin, so I'm going to put the needle down, take it out. It's really important you take your pins out as you sew. It's really dangerous to leave them in. So if you sew over it, it can snap, and you don't want any bits of snapped needles or pins flying at you while you're sewing. Remember, I said earlier, it's easy to take your pins out if you put the heads on against the raw edge. It's much quicker as you're sewing to do it this way. So I'm going to continue sewing all the way around the neckband, giving it a gentle stretch as I go, and making sure I'm adjusting the fabric and taking the pins out every few stitches. Once you've finished sewing, check all around the neckband that you haven't got any tucks or gathers, and that it all looks even all the way around. So I'm happy with that. It could do with a press, but overall I think that's gone in really well.